And I am now recording.
All right, so we're on the record in case number PLNZAD 2025-00349. My name is Clayton Priest. I'm the Administrative Hearing Officer for Salt Lake City for this item. And I see that we've got a number of individuals from the city. Mr. Holm, are you expecting anyone else?
No.
So in that case, let's go ahead and if everyone can state their appearance for the record, starting with the city.
Myra Lima, zoning administrator. Go ahead, Jason.
I'm Jason Burnson. I am the member of the planning staff. I was the one who worked on this variance.
And I'm Aubrey Clark. I'm the acting secretary.
And Mr. Holm, will you state your name for the record?
Richard Holm, Holm.
So before me today is a application on a variance request for a property located at approximately 1363 South, 1300 East. And the applicant is requesting a variance from Salt Lake City Code Section 21A.48.080B4, which prohibits the installation of artificial turf in front and corner side yards. The way that we'll proceed with the hearing is Mr. Holm will have the opportunity as the applicant to provide me with any information you'd like me to understand. The city will have a chance to respond, and then Mr. Holm, you'll kind of have the last word. I have reviewed very carefully the staff report, the narrative that was provided by the applicant, as well as a document titled, this was, I believe, submitted by the applicant. The title of the document is Appeal of Decision Requiring Removal of Artificial Turf. So I've reviewed all of those documents very carefully. So you don't feel like you need to go through and read that out verbatim. Really just help me understand the key points from your perspective. And I do need to clarify, my understanding is that this hearing today is just on the variance. This is not an appeal of any kind of code enforcement or other action with regards to removing the artificial turf. Is my understanding from the city's perspective, is that understanding correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And Mr. Holm, is that your understanding as well?
Yes.
Okay. So with that understanding, Mr. Holm, anything that you'd like me to understand?
Yeah, I wanted to say the city planners have stated that, other Salt Lake properties with sloped areas have successfully implemented landscaping. And in that our situation, it represents a self-imposed hardship. With respect, I question whether those working in a climate-controlled office behind computer screens are in the best position to make such judgments. City planners are not landscapers, and they may not fully appreciate the practical challenges homeowners face when maintaining a steeply sloped yards. I recall watching my grandfather struggle to mow the grass on the property, especially on that south side. He often cussed at the difficulty, and once the lawnmower went even over the retaining wall onto the sidewalk. Thankfully, he wasn't injured, but the hazard is very real. Recently, we hired professional landscapers to provide us a slope measurement. And on the west side, the slope or the rise is 33 inches, 33 and a half inches, and the run is 11 feet. So the 25% slope on the west side, and the south side is even a little steeper. It's 35-inch rise and on a 10-feet run. So that's a 29% slope. And according to the Salt Lake Code, landscaping and buffers, section 21A48080, real turf is prohibitive on slopes greater than 25%. So both these areas meet or exceed the threshold. And I can understand the ordinance is not arbitrary. It accepts the best practices in landscaping and erosion control. Slopes above this grade are more prone to runoff with instability and rapid soil loss. And these are issues we have personally experienced on this property. The staff also reports that there have environmental concerns related to artificial turf. Specifically, they note that artificial turf can release microplastics, PFAs, and harmful chemicals. And they also say it does not readily absorb water, potentially increasing the chemical leaching in the into the stormwater drains. So I take these concerns seriously, and I would want to respond to each of these. I recently contacted the installer of the artificial turf and requested updated information on the PFAs, the microplastics, and the permeability. And I can provide these full reports if you would like. One of the relevant reports that was conducted on the turf was on turf at Stanford Lyon Park in Connecticut. And here's some of the key findings. The turf was tested by RTI Laboratories for PFA compounds, and the results showed non-detectable levels of PFAs, meaning levels were not meaning levels were below the laboratory reporting limits. The turf met all safety standards set by the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection and the city of Stanford. The testing procedures followed proper scientific protocols and quality checks. So, our installer reports that while there are trace PFAS contaminations found in many common products, our artificial turf tested non-detectable at every level. He cited in this email that the average school fountain contains over 1,000 times the PFAS than the turf, underscoring that there is no negligible levels in our product. The installer acknowledged that he does not have specific data on the microplastics. However, it is important to recognize that many weed barriers commonly used in traditional landscaping are made from synthetic materials such as woven polypropylene. These materials degrade over time, contributing to microplastics in the soil, potentially more than a single installation of artificial turf. As you may be aware, weed barriers are far more extensively used in residential yards than artificial turf. And as far as the drainage and the permeability, the installer provided the following information regarding drainage. The ideal soil drainage is approximately 2 inches per hour. Most locations in the U.S. drain between 1 and 10 inches per hour. Our artificial turf is engineered with a proprietary system to drain between 300 and 4 inches per hour, and it sits atop a 3 to 4 inch rock subbase. This allows water to percolate under the ground highly effectively, thus mitigating storm runoff and potential chemical leaching. If we were required to remove this artificial turf, our only viable alternative would be to install weed barriers beneath the vegetation. And as noted, they too contain plastics and PFAS, potentially contradicting the city's goals of reducing such material. Additionally, due to the steep grade of the yard, applying mulch or organic material would likely lead to severe erosion, with materials washing down the slope and over the retaining wall. This not only creates a risk and maintenance challenges, but opens the door to potential liability of debris that ends up in the sidewalk or street below. So, in conclusion, given the vertical slope measurements, the documented erosion risk, and the environmental trade-offs associated with mediated alternatives, we respectfully ask this Planning Commission to reconsider our request for a variance. Our artificial turf installation is not only safer and more manageable on steep terrain, but also avoids the use of traditional materials like synthetic weed barriers and mulch that may pose greater risks over time. We are committed to being responsible stewards of our property and the surrounding community, and we believe that the solutions align with both the intent and the spirit of Salt Lake City landscaping ordinance. I just wanted to know, have you seen the pictures of the property, and do you know what I'm talking about with the slopes of the yard?
I've seen what was included in the staff report, and that shows there's areas that are within the yard itself on the hillside, and I believe that's on the, let me look at the photograph. So there's what's on the west, or sorry, the south side of the property and the west side of the property. There are two lawn areas, and then there's also park strip on the west and south sides.
Yeah, I'm just gonna show you, I'm just pan the camera over, but if you can see, this is a better representation than the city. Do you see how that slopes way down? Can you see that picture?
Yes, I can see the picture.
Okay, so that's on the south side. And on the, oh, I'll show you, yeah, okay. On the west side, this is not as bad. Let me see if I can flip the camera around. Okay. So this is the slope portion, and that's the retaining wall. That's this is not the wall the lawnmower fell off. It fell off on the south side.
So as I understand it, there's a slope from the retaining wall up to the house.
Yes.
And then there's a different slope as it comes down Harrison Avenue, the park strip, and I suppose your property also slopes down as the road goes to the west towards 1300 East.
Yeah, it's now the south side has it. I'll show you again. It levels off. It levels off at the top. If you can see my cursor, it levels a little bit off the top, but this is a steeper slope right here. And this is actually where the lawnmower fell off when my grandfather was, this is years ago. My grandfather's dead by now, but he, you know, he cursed at this having to maintain this yard. And it was all turf back then. It wasn't, you know, artificial turf. It was all grass.
In what the staff wrote, they note that there are other properties within your same zone that have similar slope issues. Is there anything with regards to that you want to address specifically?
Well, I just say that this exceeds the 25% slope, that so we wouldn't be able to put artificial turf back up there again. And if we did use the weed barrier and put the rock and the mulch, it's still going to fly over the retaining wall onto it's been very difficult to maintain the yard. The only thing that's worked the best is the artificial turf. And I understand the city's, you know, is concerned about PFAs, but, you know, I have reports from this company that says that the PFAs are non-detectable. So, and I'm sure there's microplastics in there, but if we put a weed barrier in there, it's going to still have the same potential problems of microplastics that are going to be in the soil.
In the staff report, the city also is taking the position that there are other landscaping options that would satisfy the city's landscaping requirements that could be implemented in this area. Do you have anything that you'd like me to consider with regards to that?
I would like to know what they consider. I know they've talked about xeriscaping, but you know, adding the crushed rock, the rocks itself, it's sloped enough that it's still, I think it's going to find it. So if they have an alternative, I would love to hear it, but I don't think they really have given us a very good alternative.
Is there anything else that you'd like me to take under consideration?
You know, I tell you what, I'm a little disappointed in this ordinance altogether, and I'll just tell you why. You know, when we called the city to do due diligence on whether artificial turf could be installed, we called and they said, yeah, artificial there's no permit, they said, for artificial to be installed. But they didn't add that that there is a ban on artificial turf on both the front and the side yards, and that information would have saved us significant time and frustration. I thought, we were doing our due diligence when we called. In fact, now I believe the city should require a permit for artificial turf. It would prevent situations like ours and would help owners save tens of thousands of dollars. Requiring a permit would also create a checkpoint for code compliance. So I would encourage the city to implement a permit if they're going to continue with this ban. And as far as the city goes, they based their concerns on microplastic, PFAS, and stormwater runoff. And as I shown or addressed these concerns to the city, but those concerns are, if they are truly central to the policy, why is the artificial turf still allowed in the backyards, the parks, and the sports facilities? It's to me, the selective nature of the ban suggests that this is more of aesthetics than a real environmental concern driving this ordinance. Finally, the city's selective enforcement of the code is deeply unfair. The code enforcement officer, admitted in writing that city only investigates turf violations based on complaints. That means that these there's many properties out of compliance simply because there's no neighbors to report them. This kind of enforcement fosters resentment and inconsistency in our community.
Is there anything else before we turn this over to the city?
No, that's it for now.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Holm. From the city, Jason or Mr. Bernstein, are you the one who's going to be taking the lead on this?
Yes. Just a couple of points I want to emphasize about our ordinance that these were highlighted in the staff report, but I'll just want to reiterate since the applicant mentioned these. So one thing is that there is no requirement for an applicant to have turf, like natural turf, grass. No property is required to have grass on their yard. And there's only a 33% vegetation requirement, like live vegetation requirement for landscaping in these yards. So they would only have to cover 33% of the yard with live vegetation. So the sloped areas, I mean, of course, I don't know the measurements, but the sloped areas wouldn't necessarily need to be landscaped or planted with live vegetation per our ordinance. I also just wanted to emphasize, the applicant didn't mention this, but the park strip, since the park strip was also, artificial turf was also installed in the park strip. So even though residents do have the responsibility of maintaining park strips, they are still city property. And so regardless of the decision made in here tonight with this, the applicant will need to remove the artificial turf from the park strip since the city has not given permission to install it there. So I just want to make sure to emphasize that.
In the staff report, I want to make sure, I think there's a typo on page 5 of the staff report. It references the R1 5000 zone. And that's the only place in the staff report I saw that zone. I assume that's just a typo and that should be the R1 7000 zone.
Maybe the R1 7000 was a typo because this should be the R1 5000 zone.
Because on page 1 of the staff report, it lists the zoning district as the R1 7000, and the applicant lists that as the same zone. So which zone is it that we have? I don't know that's necessarily controlling one or the other on this, but I want to make sure we're talking about the right zone.
I apologize. Let me double check. Yes. So yes, that is my mistake. On the first page, it is actually the R1 5000 zone that this is in. The landscaping standards will be the same with both of those zones, though.
All right. In the staff report, and I've already discussed this a little bit with Mr. Holm, this city's position is there's other landscaping that would be allowed on that slope. Do you have any specifics that I'm trying to make sure I understand specifically what's allowed?
Like what's permitted as far as landscaping
Right.
options?
What landscapes options would be allowed?
As I mentioned, like the planting of native vegetation. I know sometimes on steep slope areas, I've seen the installation of retaining walls with, as mentioning, mulch. I'm not an expert on I am not an expert on landscaping specifically, but there are nearby properties that are in the same zone where I have seen that they have had land or installed landscaping that does meet our code.
So essentially, there are alternatives to turf, is what I'm hearing.
Yes, there are
Native
alternatives to
plants,
turf.
other annuals, perennials that would be allowed
Yes.
in that area, even if turf doesn't work.
Yes. So the landscaping requirements say that there's just a minimum 33% live vegetation requirement. So,
and that requirement can be filled by turf or other native plants, grasses, shrubs, things like that wouldn't necessarily require the same mowing maintenance, if you will, as
yes,
turf.
That's correct.
And I would just add really quick, we don't usually provide advice on the type of vegetation. So it is on the property owner to decide what fits into that definition of vegetation. And it just has to be vegetation.
In the staff report, as part of the next steps, there's either approval or denial. If the request is denied, it says that the artificial turf must be removed. And I've not made a decision yet, but if the application is denied, is the city's anticipation that there will be a deadline as part of the order to remove the turf, or is that part of a separate proceeding?
That I'm not sure on if Mara has any.
I guess that next step is not completely full because they could still appeal your decision. Once there is a decision, then he moves to enforcement. And our understanding is it's currently under enforcement and it's on hold pending a decision.
Thank you. I just want to make sure I understand procedurally where things are at. So that's helpful to understand that there's a separate enforcement action that's been stayed.
Clayton?
Yes.
I did notice that there's an attendee with their hand raised. I just wanted to notify the members of the public that as of May, state law prohibits a public hearing during an appeals hearing. So we won't be calling on you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else from the city that I should be aware of?
Nothing that I don't think I have anything else to add.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Holm, that means we're back to you. Anything that you'd like to say in response to what was presented by the city?
I just wanted to reiterate that the alternatives are not so good. Aside from the artificial turf, they talk about mulch and crushed rock and things like that. I know that those are going to erode away a lot quicker and cause more wall damage to the retaining wall below. So I hope that you take that into consideration.
I will. Anything else? You had mentioned a couple of studies and whether or not I wanted to see those specifically. I will just take your proffer that those studies say what you've represented, that they say, I don't need to see a specific copy of those studies, and have you submit them in order for me to consider them.
Okay, I'll be happy to if you ever want to. He sent me a lot more of some other studies as well, and the drainage flow tests that were done on the artificial turf as well. So if you decide you want some of that, just let me know.
All right, I'll review. If for some reason, as I review the elements and what's been provided, I feel like it's necessary for me to see that beyond what you've proffered today as part of your testimony, I will let you know. But I think we'll most likely be able to just move forward with what you've proffered, they say, and I'll just accept that proffer.
Okay.
So with that, I will take the matter under advisement, and you should expect to see a formal written decision issued within about the next 10 business days.
Okay, I appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.